All right. Good evening, and welcome to the Working Wednesdays broadcast. I am your host, Audra V. Hurd, and I'm so excited about tonight's show. I want to start off by saying welcome, good evening, God bless you all. Thank you for joining. We got an exciting show coming up tonight. Wonderful, blessed woman of God who's going to come on and share some good nuggets from her books. So do me a favor, like, share, tag the video, get somebody on tonight. It's going to be a phenomenal testimony. She's got some great books that are out there, and I don't want to let all the cat out of the bag because I'm going to do her formal introduction. But do me a favor, like the video, share it, tag it. Hello, good evening, good evening. It's going to be a little challenging for me to tell who's on, so do me a favor. Go ahead and shout me out in the comments. Send me a like, send me a comment so I know that you are there. For those who may be joining me for the first time, I am Audra V. Hurd. I am the CEO, founder, and chief editor of IBG Publications. And so I'm excited to have you on this week. This is the Working Wednesdays broadcast. We spotlight authors and business owners giving exposure to their brand. So I'm so excited for my guest that's going to be on tonight. We're not going to waste a whole lot of time getting her on. I'm going to go ahead and read her introduction. But like I said, do me a favor, like, share, tag the video. That's what I spent some time doing, just kind of sharing the video tonight. So, good. God bless you all. Thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful show tonight. Wonderful testimony. I'm excited to have this woman of God come on and share tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and read her bio. Yes, we shifted up just a little bit because I kind of start doing away with so many commercials. We are going to play her video prior to getting her on. So we're going to go ahead and work on that. Let me do that first. And bear with me one moment here so I can get everything pulled up. So we're going to go ahead and put her video on. When it's time, I will put her into the feed. So God bless you all. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much for coming on this evening. Let's go ahead and introduce our guest. She is none other than Dr. Richelle L. Resto. Dr. Richelle L. Resto was born in 1975. Guess what, y'all? I told y'all 75 was a good year, right? I told y'all that was a good year because that's my year too. She was born in 1975 in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and is a native of Durham, North Carolina. Dr. Resto is a model example of education. She has received the following degrees. She has received her Bachelor of Art degree in Child Development from North Carolina Central University. She has received her Master of Science degree from North Carolina Central University, Master's of Theology degree from Isaiah College and Seminary, and Doctor of Philosophy degree in Higher Education Leadership, Capella University. Dr. Resto has served in several leadership roles in her professional higher education career through advancement to now serving as Dean of Academics in Washington, D.C. She is the published author of books entitled The Gifts of Life Nobody Wants, All Eyes on Me to Achieve My Destiny, and Behind Closed Doors, Married to the Church. She's going to share about that book tonight. My Wife is My Mistress. That's going to be good stuff. These books offer spiritual nuggets and strategies needed to triumph over years of pain, and is written from the perspective of a woman who had to learn how to fight through the tears and overcome obstacles. Dr. Resto has been instrumental in overseeing various departments within the community and various ministries. She has assisted with implementing viable children's tutoring programs within several organizations and has had the opportunity to train various organizational departments on certain leadership styles. She is the founder and president of a monumental women's ministry called the Spiritual Daughters Movement. This movement has empowered, encouraged, and equipped women around the country to reach their zenith in the body of Christ. I can't wait to hear about the zenith. Dr. Resto is known for her clever mentoring and a leadership style that instills into people that life is a vast opportunity of unlimited possibilities. One of her favorite sayings, your tears have purpose. So I'm so excited to get her on tonight. Before we get her on, we're going to show her promo, her video, and then we're going to bring her right on in. So hold on to your seats. It's about to get good. All right, I am back, and so here is my guest tonight. How are you? How are you?
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Welcome to the Working Wednesdays broadcast. We are so glad to have you this evening. Go ahead and do me a favor and greet our guests in our audience tonight,
I am
however you feel led.
I am so excited. Greetings to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to sharing a lot of information, being very transparent. So again, welcome and let's get started.
All right. Well, let's jump right on in. Let's first of all talk about how did you answer your call to ministry and
Mhm.
your call to minister the gospel. Let's start right there. Before we get into the juicy, let's start right there.
Well,
Your call.
I preached my first sermon at the age of 16 under the leadership of my father, which is Dr. Richard Scott McMillan. He pastors a church in North Carolina.
Wow.
Actually, he's still pastoring the same church over 30 something years. And so I preached my initial sermon at the age of 16. Always was a journal, writing in journals. So I've been writing in journals from 16 up of different things that I've experienced, just different things that I've saw throughout life. At the age of 16, a lot of people will share a lot of information with you in confidence. And I remember journaling that and just going through life as a minister, a young minister, learning a lot about what God called you to do, dealing with peer pressure, making a lot of mistakes. There is the only guidance that you have at the age of 16 is the Bible. And being saved at the age of 16 was very challenging. Being a virgin when you graduate from high school. I remember just really the Holy Spirit really dealing with me about abstinence and maintaining that and preaching. And I wrote a lot of sermons because at the age of 16 you don't get a lot of invitations. You get offered to go to youth conferences. And so at the age of 16 all the way up, I remember writing a lot of sermons that I do now preach, that I had went from the age of 16. So it's so interesting how the Lord really deals with you at that age. And I come from a lineage of great preachers. My dad has seven siblings, and all of them are either preachers or they married preachers or they sing. So all come from a family of preachers.
Wow, wow. I know we're going to get to the book, but talk a little bit because I know there may be some young people listening who are young, and you know the peer pressure is real to live how God wants you to live. So talk a little bit about how you know preserving yourself, you know, at
Mm-hmm.
a young age and just desiring to live holy. That
Mm-hmm.
had to be challenging at 16 because you and I didn't even realize we were the same age until I read your bio. So
Yes.
I know what I was doing at 16, and I wasn't trying to preach at 16.
Yeah.
It didn't come from me until about 6 or 7 years later. But you know, but
Yeah.
anyway, talk about you know the challenges that you face because it explains why you have such a passion, you know, for
Mm-hmm.
young people.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about your challenges.
Well, I think some of the challenges I remember going when I went to prom at the 11th grade, I went with a whole bunch of females because when you are a PK kid, you have already been set apart. So you already have that label already tied to you. I went to the prom with a whole bunch of females in the 11th grade, and we had rules and boundaries growing up. And it was that, you had to be home at a certain time. You couldn't wear makeup until you become a certain age, really preserving their purity of
Yeah,
who you are. My parents didn't allow us to go spend the night. So they really made sure that they instilled good values, in me. And even now I say, I'm never going to be like that. And I have two daughters, and I'm the same way. No, you can't spend the night. Just come home. So being, having those foundations and making sure, I remember my parents making sure we had a good mentor or outlet or someone that you could talk to and be real with. We sung in a choir, and you pretty much dated the people that you were around all the time. And so we were very active in church, and it was so much fun. You look forward to going to choir rehearsals, 2 or 3 times a week. And the youth choir, we had robes. So we had discipline,
yeah,
and we took a lot of trips together. And I think that really mold who I am today. I think also when I remember going to the senior prom, and my dad said, "Here is money, and here is a Bible, and you tell him he has to get through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John before he even gets a kiss from you."
I love it.
And the young man, he's probably gonna be watching this, but he took me to the prom, and he was so terrified. He was like, "Oh my God, is the Lord in the car with us?" Like, so it was kind of setting those parameters. And you take those principles with you when you go to college, and as you begin to move on and handling peer pressure. The same peer pressure still that's happening now is a little more intense now. Dealing with females, and at that time everyone knew that I was a virgin. So can you imagine in high school? And and the person that asked me to go was popular. So it was always some type of beef going on with the females. I was really smart, and they used to call us the Macmillan crew. The Macmillan crew. And my dad at that time would always buy us cars that looked like Uncle Buck cars. They smoked. You people knew they was loud, they was big. It wasn't anything fancy because he wanted us to say humble. And so I remember those traditional things, that they didn't give us everything. They made us work for it. Even though that we were set apart, we were very humble. And I think dealing with those peer pressures, learning how to pray, learning really how to just really say not lengthy prayers, but just honest and transparent prayers really helped. Having saved friends, not being ashamed to say, "I'm saved." I don't do that. Even if people around me did, it didn't impact me. They knew who to come to. So being that light and not being ashamed.
Wow, wow. That's a phenomenal testimony, and it just rings true to the fact that getting it from home
Mhm.
is how it sticks. And having that real true environment to be transparent with God. In
Right,
such an
right.
early age, it helped keep you on the straight and narrow. To fulfill the call that God has for your life. I used to get angry about how strict my mother was on me when I was young, but now I realize it was to prepare me for the
Yes,
strict lifestyle that God has for me now.
yes.
So I can relate in that regard. I wasn't 16 when I answered my call, but I was like in my very early 20s and just been living for God ever since. But let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about your books. Let's talk about the main book we want to talk about tonight. And tell us the backdrop. Give us the title, Married to the Church. Give us the title. What impressed on you to write the book, and what is it about? Now, don't give all of it away because we
Okay.
want you to go and get it from Amazon.
Okay.
But, go ahead and just share what the book is about.
So the book, I think the background of the book came from years of interviews with various first ladies, talking a little bit about their stories, hearing it from friends, and I really started taking notes at the age of 18, trying to understand what it meant to be married into the church. Spending a lot of time at church, you see a lot of things that you shouldn't see, and you see a lot of things that you don't want to see. And so, and trying to decipher what is God and what is man.
Mm,
And so at that time, I began to journal a lot about brokenness. You learn a lot of things when you go into the bathroom with women, and you see ushers in there and, with tissues, and sometimes they don't check all of the stalls. And so you don't know who's really listening to some of the information that's being shared.
yeah.
And so learning a little bit about that, I began to try to understand what was happening in the church. Just recently, I was on a site and I noticed that they posed a question of how many individuals would date a pastor. And I read over 500 or so comments, and the comments indicated that the pastors are the worst ones. They talked about the pastors, they cuss just as much as they do. These are women. Some of them were saying that the things that they do after they get out of the pulpit, I mean, the comments really confirmed, and the divorce rate statistics confirmed that there is a growing issue happening, and people are labeling that is God, but it's really man.
Right, right.
And so we really are preaching over issues, and we are uh, shouting over issues
Right.
that need to be addressed after the benediction.
Yes,
And
yes.
so that gives kind of the history of it, and then I started kind of gathering all this information, stories from various first ladies, stories from various men who were broken. It's some women are doing the same thing too, but this book highlights being married to the church. A lot of it stems from them not having an accountability partner or accountability person that holds their feet to the fire. They have masked preaching, but not masked being married, not masked being a pastor, not being a pastor, but they have not mastered being a good husband and a good father. And they are really, the church gets the best part of the individual, the wife, the children, they get the worst part. And so that's kind of what the background of the book is. And so I took a lot of that information and kind of craft. I've been working on this for some time. This book made me a little nervous because it's out of the comfort zone for myself. I'm a self-help writer to this day. Education makes you a self-help writer because you're always trying to find tools to help. I'm an educator, and
Right.
so. But this book, I really wanted to capture the things that happen behind closed doors of rejection, denial, frustration, broken vows. I really want to talk about deception, the things that happen when the people are not in the presence of God. I wanted to talk about eating the forbidden fruit of flesh, eating the forbidden fruit of sin, infidelity, emotionalism,
Yeah.
guilt, and those type of things. So that's kind of what happened as we shifted in towards behind closed doors.
Wow, wow. That's what you're saying is so needed, because a lot of people are married to the church, and their wife becomes their mistress, and as well as their family, and so it's something that's really been going on for years.
Yes.
But it's like you said, it's not being addressed. The mask is not coming off. But what it has done is it has chased people away from the church, because you can't hide what's going on at home but for so long.
Hmm.
It's gonna surface, it's gonna manifest, and a lot of people can see what happens is it becomes your family is now disrespecting you, because they get that part of you, like you said, the leftovers that come home, they get that
Hmm.
part. And so
Hmm.
your respect level becomes diminished
Hmm.
because you're not doing at home what you're doing in the church.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of that, and just a lot of cases of women who, the divorce rate is sad to say that the divorce rate is so high in the church. Do
Hmm.
you see it more among leaders and pastors, or is it just an epidemic in the church altogether?
I think it's an epidemic that has been happening so long. And if you really think about it, our grandmothers, our forefathers, they had more of a tolerance level. We didn't realize that our grandfather had 10 children to the funeral.
I know what you're talking about. That was my grandfather. I know what you're talking about.
So it was like, oh, who's all these people in the obituary? And so it wasn't until then, and but they stayed. They really had an endurance and a patience and a survival that these millennials and they're like, look, I'm not putting up with this foolishness anymore. And so I think now the tolerance level, and because it's so many tactics that are being used, women scout men out, especially leaders. They're like prey to them, especially mistresses. And I've chatted with several mistresses, and when I was writing this book, and you counsel so many people, and they shared with me, was like, I have a hunger for men of power. The anointed is very attractive.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
um,
is.
and so what they do is that they scout men. They come to churches, and you really have to be really rooted and grounded in the Word of God, because these mistresses are really looking for men of power. They're really thriving off of trying to find someone that they can use as their prey. Now, most of them really don't want them. They just want the benefits that come with being with them.
Right.
Most of the time, these leaders share and they feel most vulnerable with with the mistresses versus being with the wives, meaning that the mistresses has a cunning way about them that could get them to share the most intimate secrets. They really accept them for who they are,
Right.
and it's just like they're living two different lives, one way in church and one way outside of the church. And so that's the theory gained from a lot of mistresses who have had relationships with pastors. They don't feel any guilt. It's like a fire, an intense. It's like an intense relationship, and they are doing things that the wives will never do.
Wow.
And they share their it's as if they will cross the lines. It's like they are they fulfill the flesh side of them. When they finish preaching, they're most vulnerable.
Right.
And so that's why you have to guard the anointing,
Yes.
because that flesh is really, and the word says, resist temptation, shun the very appearance of
Right.
temptation.
Right.
But the mistresses is very tempting if they're coming in there looking anything opposite than the wife. They're
Wow.
fun.
Wow.
Um, and so that's kind of what I was seeing doing my research with the book, talking with mistresses, trying to understand, do they feel any guilt behind this? Do they feel heartbreak? Do they? It's just like they said, it's just like a drug. It's like a high, and they are have a way of making these leaders feel so comfortable that they're willing to give them anything and everything.
Wow. Do you think that is it more of spiritual war or is it a fleshly war? Like, do you feel like that there are demonic spirits on assignment through these women? Or do you think that it's just, a part of who they are, their makeup? I just like doing this,
Mhm,
because a lot of times people can need deliverance so much that it just becomes a part of their makeup. It
mhm,
becomes a part
mhm,
of who they are. And like you said, they get to the point they don't even see anything wrong with what
mhm.
they're doing.
Yeah, I
So my
think
question is, do you see it as more spiritual or more fleshly?
I think it can be a combination of both, because women, I remember speaking with one first lady, and when they do altar call, and you always have a whole bunch of single women that come up with tight fitting dresses, and they come up, woo, their outfits are too tight, and they don't want anybody to lay hands on them but the pastor.
Right.
Or they, a lot of the information that I gathered, they was giving gifts to their pastors that was not befitting, like things that you would never give to your pastor. So crossing all kinds of lines, in regards to fulfilling the lust of the flesh. You got to realize too is that we are not ignorant to Satan's devices, and
Right.
whatever our weaknesses is, if we don't get delivered and healed and set free, some people need counseling for it, then it's going to come back and try to take you out of here. The adversary tries to kill, steal, and destroy you. And whatever that thorn in your flesh is, that is the thing that's going to travel you and haunt you down and prey at you. So I do think it is a spiritual warfare. I think it also is, and in my book, I'm very specific of, if you that some women were at, it was just like at the coffee shop, and one of the pastors looked at them, and they said, I can, he looked at me in a way to make me know that I was desirable, so I showed up to his church. So I mean, or it was a pastor who took someone out, and she ended up going with him, and the date was so awesome, but she did not know that he was married until she Googled him. And she said, you know, do I take this risk? Because I'm attracted to him. She thought the date was flawless. He knew the owner of the restaurant. And she was like, it was a war going on. He could sing. He just was like her dream come true, but she did not know that he was married. And he says, we can make it work. Most leaders, when they are trying to entertain, they always go outside of their cities. So they really have, some of them have apartments outside of their regions. Some of them have frequent hotel visits. Some of them have mistresses already living in a separate apartments. They're taking care of children, and the wives will never know about it. And so I think it is flesh and spirit, but I think it's also they feel like they can outsmart God, and they get away with it, and they keep, the flesh will always want more and more and more of it. And so, but the women have to make a decision. Do I want to cross this line or not? And sometimes, from talking with some pastors, they're just in too deep. They're just in
Yeah.
too deep.
Yeah.
They have really taken, I'll repent about it and I'll keep going. So, but they sin willfully. It's the flesh. They just can't make a decision. And it's so many women out here that will settle for that type of lifestyle. Some of them are sitting in congregations and they will the I mean, most first ladies may know, but they really have their eyes on taking the pastor from his family.
Mm, wow. Wow. So I'm looking at some comments. Yes, Janelle. She says, "Who is this you're referring to?" So she must have come in on the Taylor end of the conversation. And so we are referring to pastors and ministers and leaders in the church. This is the reality of what's going on. Looks like my connection is kind of going in and out. Uh, let's see. Can you still hear me pretty good?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Dr.
Yes.
Richelle?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, kind of doing kind of crazy. But at any rate, let's see. I just don't like to lose the conversation. But somebody was asking a question, who were you referring to? And I was just saying that, you're referring to ministers, pastors, leaders. We are specifically talking about her book. It's called Married to the Church. So we're specifically talking about the book right now. So let me ask you this. It seems that you talk to a lot of first ladies and a lot of mistresses and different people you counsel. How has writing this book and putting it together, how has it impacted your life? What has it done for you personally, writing this?
Well, personally, I really it was really interesting for me to be able to write the book. I am newly single, and I am really embracing and trying to understand what it feels like to I used to be a first lady. So and people thought that a lot of times this book was about me. And
Okay.
and it wasn't really about my story, but I could empathize with the role of a first lady. Sometimes we sweep a lot of things under the carpet. We tend to suffer in silence. We tend to gravitate to familiarity or being a part of a group of people that um, that are just like us. And I really had to do a lot of self evaluation when writing this book to say, and to be fair, I'm not here to bash any pastors or any leaders. I have the utmost respect. But what I am here to say is that you don't have to suffer in silence. And you do have a story that you can share to say that we as a community, we have to do better with taking care of each other, and not talking about each other, but nurturing each other back to life. And so it was really transformational. It was one of the chapters I talk about is denial, and it really can, church people can also make you can go through a lot of emotional abuse in church. So you can have a lot of emotional abuse in church. Some church people are the most judgmental people, and they walk around with the big crosses, the big Bibles, can preach you under the bleachers, but they're very judgmental and do a lot of, I call it, they beat you with the word. And love covers a multitude of sin, and a lot of people are walking around being manipulated by people who are really implementing emotional abuse. You have a lot of it's a way that you correct people, but I have seen stories and stories of first ladies saying that their husbands would tell them, we're only married when we come to church. When we get in the car, I am not your husband. Or they would just say, don't, the things that happen in the study, or don't touch me when you get in the car. But they'll go around the church and hug every first lady. That is a form of emotional abuse. And so these are just different stories, and it really impacted me to say, I will not be another statistics in that way. I will not suffer in silence. I will tell the story and be the advocate and the voice for on behalf of many first ladies who are dealing with different things, who mask hurt, who many first ladies are really sick, not because of it's because of stress. They have no one that they feel comfortable with talking to. They haven't identified a tribe of people or outlet. It really hurts to see pastors who commit suicide. It's because they have not had anyone that they can be transparent to. Why does it take another pastor to lose a life for you to say this pastor's in trouble? They need to really have just take a break, and really deal with themselves. And so I really took time out in writing this book to really deal with myself, learn a lot about God can use your broken pieces, and really talk about, okay, God, I'm walking into a new chapter in my life, and what do I expect out of a man? Why do I need to settle? What do I bring to the table? And identifying what's the difference between what God says and what man says. And so that really had an impact. And listening to various stories really made me really do a lot of self reflection, to say, how much do I want to share about it? How can I use this as a tool to help other people stay together? And some people need to realize, is this the end for me? How do I deal with my husband's mistresses? And so in a way that in a godly way.
You this is just so good. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I don't know if you know it, but I wrote a book called Spirit Wives.
Mm.
Yeah. And everything you are saying confirms my book. perspective of a single person, being fed everything you're saying, being fed these false promises, the innuendos, insinuations. Now, it stems from my personal testimony of dealing with someone who would insinuate for years I was their wife, but never make good on the promises. This is the game that goes on in the church.
Okay.
And nobody wants to talk about this subject. I promise me you probably could partner.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, seriously, because one of the things the Lord put in my spirit was that it will become like a TV series.
I received that.
Like a TV series because it's the reality of what's going on. But like I said, nobody wants to talk about that this is going on because people want to live in this bubble. They want to live in the emotional height, like you talk about being emotionally abused. And a lot of it goes back to at the core of a woman. There's something at the core of that woman that is just tolerating this behavior. Mm-hmm. And it could be, like you said, the lust for power or the desire to they got a covenant breaking spirit. They just want to break a covenant. It's so many things that it really just goes back to the core of that woman and why she allows what she allows. Yeah. So this is just like, and I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and I'm hearing everything you're saying. And then it just clicked like, these women are spirit wives.
Okay.
And I promise you, when you read the book, you're going to be like, oh my God. Oh my God. Because I bring a totally different perspective, but you're actually bringing it in like, actual cases, factual, encounters. So, people need to know that this is going on. But my question to you is, and this is a little off the script, do you think that there's a remedy? Do you think that there is a solution? Do you see this, ever not being an issue, or will it ever go back to, people that are not in the church lusting for power? I personally think the church is the biggest place where people get abused, capitalized off of, misused, and it all goes back again to the inner need for some kind of approval, some kind of need to feel accepted, because going back into the history of the Black church, and I'm sure this is where most of where you wrote came from. When you go back to the history of the Black church, we went into the church because that's where we got acceptance. That's where we were approved. Going back way to slavery, it was the only place we really had any power. So that spirit has really still stayed with the church over the years, and now it's just manifesting in a different way. So my question to you is, do you see, do you think that there'll ever be, this won't be going on?
Yeah, I think that, Joshua talks, you have to root it out, you have to pull it up, and you really have to set forums. I was listening to a couple talk about marriage, and they said, this epidemic has allowed a lot of people to be home now. and I'm really trending to see, will the divorce rate spike or will it decrease? And I'm really writing the next book, which I'll talk a little bit about, is I'm really trying to understand now, because now you are at home and you have to deal with your stuff. A book I haven't written yet, Journey to Loving Me. You have to take this journey now, and you have to be at home. And you're really having to spend a lot of time in isolation.
Yes.
And you are quarantining with your family or your mistress. You gotta really, and so one way that I really think that the solution is really dealing with it and not skirting over the issues. We really have to get some intense counseling.
Yes.
I always say you need two type of counselors. You need one, your pastoral, your religious counselor, your Christian counseling, but you also need a therapist that
Yes.
could really go back to your childhood years.
Right.
All of this stuff is not stemming because your parents abandoning you. It's not stemming because you dealing with rejection. A lot of this stuff is really because this is really who you really are.
Mm. Wow.
This is really who you really are. So I think that and I'm really trending the statistics. I'm really praying that the divorce rate will not heighten across um all races. This is the year of the pandemic. We're
Yeah.
going to see pandemics in marriages. This is just not one pandemic. We're talking about families. We're seeing pandemics all in races. And so I'm really hoping that the church will take the families back, and get it back in alignment with the will of God. And
Yeah.
that's the only way, spending more time. I remember growing up, we would sit at the table, no TVs,
Yes.
and talking, and going back to communicating, going back to playing board games. Everything now
Right.
is electronics.
Right.
And just recently we noticed that the phone systems was acting up. And I said, you know what, God, you're really trying to take us back to where we are
Right.
communicating.
Right.
Texting is, I call it a secret sin, because a lot of the times you don't know what's going on. Texting is really, and I really need to talk a lot about that in my second book about texting and how we're missing. Yes, it is a form of communication, but it's
Right.
a dangerous form of communication. We
Right.
really need to be having dialogue,
Yeah.
and that is really where we need to go back to upholding the Christian and biblical standards
Yes.
of
Yeah.
what a family looks like. If we did a poll of what an ideal family looks like, it is not going to be the Huxtables anymore. We grew up on Huxtables.
Right. Right.
Now it's Ti, and
Right.
it's all these TV shows. That's what they are looking at now, and we don't have any of the Bill Cosby's and those shows depicting what family looks like. Even the first family in churches, most of the time you don't even see the first family at church anymore.
Mm.
And you kind of can look and say, someone was telling me, in order for me to really feel the health of the church, I look at the first lady.
Mm. That's true. That's
The
true.
first lady is going to show the health of the church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I heard that several times, and I think that that's true, because if you want to know if the man of God is taking care of his things at home, look at the health of the first lady,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the mistress,
Right.
not the wannabe first lady. I'm talking about the one that he's in covenant with. And
Yeah.
so I think if we spend more time dialoguing and getting the information out there, do I have all the answers? No, but I am committed to making sure that we change this, that we get a handle on this, that we show our children that they are marriages that last 30,
Right.
40, 50 years. It can work, but it's not a microwave process.
Right.
It's not one that's gonna, it's gonna take multiple solutions. One of my colleagues was telling me they have groups like marriage groups, and they
Yeah.
go out once a month, and it reminds you of why did I get married, and they made a commitment to each other to say every marriage in this covenant is going to make it. And
Yeah.
she said they had one couple out of the group that wasn't going to make it, but they spent countless times and hours making sure that they crossed that hurdle. We have to go back to making sure that all families matter, all lives matter, and we don't want another broken son. We don't want another broken father. We don't want another broken first lady. We don't want another broken pastor. We are committed to changing and saving our families.
Yes. Yes. That is still. Whew. That's good stuff. I mean, everything you're saying is so good because it does start at home, and when you talk about, sitting down to the table and, no phones. That's where the connection is made, across the family, is at the table. And I talked about a few weeks ago, you and I are the same age. And so our generation is probably the last generation to have been raised with those values, or to have
Mm-hmm.
been raised with, the like every Sunday in our household, it was church, and then you come home, it was Sunday dinner,
Yes.
we set the table. Dinner was cooked. When we came home from church at 1 o'clock, dinner was ready. It wasn't being cooked. It wasn't on the stove. It was heating up so we could eat it.
That's right.
So you sat down at the table, whether you want to sit there or not. You were sitting at that table and you were engaging in whatever. And families don't do that anymore.
Mm-mm.
They don't sit down, they don't communicate, and it has become, the face and the phone generation.
Yeah.
And so, those of us who are still part of those generations have to instill those values. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we don't instill it, you're going to keep, continue to see that brokenness or those broken lines, and it's just, I'm grieved by it, because
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that have made me the person that I am. The
Mm-hmm.
wisdom, they say, people say, oh, you're so wise. Well, I got it from my grandmother. I
Yes.
got it from my mother. I got it from my grandmother. So I'm just believing God with you,
Yeah.
restoration, of these values come back, and the stick to itness for male,
Yes. Yes.
because if you didn't have a good example, you don't have a lot to go on.
Mm-mm.
So people do need to see these examples. I do want to bring a couple comments I'm seeing. Let's see. So good evening, everybody. I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge our audience. We have a few people that are on with us. Hey, Nicole. Good evening, Tanya. Good evening, Savannah. Janelle. Good evening, Barbara. I see you're on as well. Good evening. Good evening. I saw a couple people over here in my watch party. Tam. Good evening, Selena. Good evening, Angela. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. One person, I did want to share this comment because I actually had these two business owners on yesterday for my Tip Me Tuesdays, which I interview authors and business owners in one of the groups I'm in. And they actually have a First Ladies Enterprise where they do exactly what you're talking about, bring women together, build those relationships, create unity, and share, just how to do life and be unified and be on one accord. So their business is called the First Lady Enterprise
I
Club.
love it.
Yes, yes. So we got some people that God is starting to prick their hearts
Good.
to get these kind of things going and bring women together, because chances are, if a relationship between a man and a woman, two women, I'm sorry, if a relationship between two women was broken, chances are it might have been a man involved. And it's sad because it just seems like a competition. And as
Yeah.
a wife, you shouldn't be in competition with nobody as a wife. That's
Right.
how I see it. Okay, Venus. Hey, good evening, Venus. Thanks for joining. So, what wishes do you have for the book? And I saw the question about where to buy the book. We're going to talk about that more towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the wishes that you have for the book? What is your desire when you?
My desire is just again, the book is about Pastor Mark and a first lady who was or used to be a mistress of powerful men, and she changed her ways to becoming a first lady. So she went to a transition, and how she loved her husband so much that she covered him instead of exposing him,
Wow.
and she ended up dealing with the mistresses, um, handling all of the side chicks
Oh,
for
wow.
him. And a
Wow.
lot of times you do have mistresses that do handle the side chick, like a family that prays. That stuff is really happening. Uh, and so, what I hope that this book, it's a great read. You can read it in one day again. And I just wanted it to just surface a little bit about what's happening in the church. I was really going between adding the self-help tools in it because I'm all about, oh gosh, we got to put a journal in here. We got to do this, to really cultivate feelings and communication and conversation. So the goal for this book is to really begin to identify that the things that's happening behind closed doors is real. You what you're feeling is real, and there is an outlet for you. There is an outlet like the group that you shared. There are a lot of first ladies groups available, but sometimes just going to therapy, figuring it out, what is going on with you. A lot of the things, it's not even about you, it's because of the spirit that's inside of that person. And so really reaching out to support groups. I wish that more churches would spend more time inviting therapists in there to talk about what's really happening at home and do group sessions with the families, looping in the children, figuring out what's going on. If you really start splitting these churches up by tribes, you'll really see what's going on, and start with your leadership team doing house calls, going to people's homes, and you will really see what's really happening on the outside of church. And so I think that just giving a little exposure. The second book that I'm really working on, and it's really going to come from more of the male's point of view. And so I have a group of men who are in leadership positions. They're going to share some of their views of how you get caught up in being married to the church. It's just something inside of them so that we could understand it. And then I want to really talk and help us understand what are the characteristics. How can we help leaders understand or create an outlet for them? And I'm trying to do some character development because I'm not a man. And so thank you, Jesus. And so I'm trying to really cultivate and shape and make it realistic of what is really going on inside of a man when they see an attractive woman. One gentleman told me, he's like, when I take her to dinner, it's just dinner, but in our mind is something else. When we put on this MAC makeup and red lipstick and skinny dress, that means, listen, we get ready to take this to another, so helping us, right, helping us understand the insight of really what's going on inside of a man that has the anointing of God. And how do they resist temptation? How do they fall into temptation? And how do they become married to the church? How do they have mistresses? And so that's my goal, is just to be very informative, to decrease the divorce rate and to save as many families as we can. I have so many male students who grew up without their fathers, and they do not know how to be good husbands. They don't know how to be good providers. They talk at their families and not to their families. They don't know how to build relationships. And so I really don't want to see another broken man. I don't want to see another statistics. I don't want to see the divorce rate go increase after the pandemic or during the pandemic. I don't want to turn on the news and see another celebrity marriage destroyed behind a mistress. It's like I want to take families back. And so I made a commitment. If I have to write books upon books, go on a television show, whatever, collaborate just to get the information out there and protect the people that have shared.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So this would be the spinoff to this book?
Yes. the spin-off to the book, my readers are really, I had actually three readers. I had, and the information in here really came, like there are letters in here of what they think a first lady should look like. That came from someone who said, I think they were describing based on looking at the first lady in church, what they thought the first lady displayed. But her husband really was, she was really suffering in silence. So there are letters in here, you know, of what people think is going on with the first lady, and they're so off with their descriptions. And so the spinoff of the book is book number 2 is Married to the Church, or Married to the Preacher and the Priest and the Pastor. So we're talking about 3 different roles all wrapped up into one.
Okay.
And then so talking about that, and then the third book would be Journey to Loving Me. And so that book is going to be a spinoff of Now I'm on my journey to loving myself. And so it's the spinoff. The second book I really I wrote it very short. And now my readers are saying I want more. It's a lot of twists in here. They are trying to figure out what's going to happen. How did the first lady get herself caught up into a web? Because you know, after a while, it's not but so much we as women can take. It's nothing worse than a woman that's scorned. And so that's what this book is going to be. And so I'm really hearing the readers really seeking the Lord on how to take this book, getting with male pastors that's going to share a lot of information to help me do a lot of character development. I don't want to miss or misinterpret from their point of view of what they're thinking.
Wow. This is going to be good stuff. So the second one has released, or?
No, it hasn't. I'm still in the writing phase. I'm at a writer's block, as you know. We
Okay.
have them sometimes because I really, again, don't want anyone to feel. I really want to capture the true essence of an anointed man in leadership, and so I'm really having to reach out to people, male pastors, to get an idea of if that's what I'm thinking. So now you'll hear in the next book more of the male side of it and what they're going through, dating mistresses, trying to be married to the church, trying to hold it down, what it looks like, trying to please God,
Yeah.
and how they deal with themselves when they commit adultery.
Wow. Wow. That's going to be a very powerful read. So I'm excited. Do you have any projections? Are you projecting next year for the release, or?
I'm really trying this year. My readers, I feel a lot of pressure. I have readers from all walks of life who've read the book, and they are just giving me ideas. They was some of it they could figure out, and so I'm really trying to figure out and taking a lot of feedback. But it's really going to be really juicy. It's really going to be steamy. It's going to be a twist in here. I'm just stuck at the character development about the pastor and where to take his role in this. But it's going to be a happy ending. I
Wow.
hope.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. So, what are some words of encouragement that you would give our viewers who might desire to write a book and
Mhm.
just don't know what to write about, where to start? What kind of words of encouragement do you have for them?
You know, you if you're a journal writer, you know, you probably already have a story already, whether it's poetry. I put a poetry in this book that I wrote when I was in the 8th grade. And so I just tell people, you have a story inside of you. And if you just write, just start, and you know, and release it. Everyone loves a good read. It's not in the number of pages, it's in the quality, you know, the quality of the content. And I used to get caught up and say, oh, it's not thick enough, but then I had to learn it's all in the quality of the content. And so I just say, you know, if it's a poetry book, you know, find find your passion, not a hobby, because a hobby is something you can drop. It's something you don't stick to, but when it's your passion, you will see it to the completion. And so pick a topic, write on it. You know, when I write, I always do my book covers first. I don't know, I think it's all strange, I know, but I do my book covers inspires the content, and then I just begin to write, and I just, you know, stop, and you know, I just pick a day, and I'm very consistent. I just write. I love to write by the ocean. It's so inspiring. And I used to write every Friday. Every Friday was my time to write. I love going away, and just writing is something. I would stay up all night on vacations, just write, and I would finish a lot of it. So find your writing place, and you just write. I mean, I'm prophesying me a beach house now somewhere near the ocean. So I can just go there, you know, and just write the whole weekend, and I stay up all night just writing. I mean, I really love to just really, and the downloads are so, you know, you can just, like, you can see yourself writing in your sleep. Like this book that I'm getting ready, you know, to start on, I wake up and I hear the downloads of where to start on some of this. So be consistent and just start writing. Find you someone that believes in your writing and let them read it and go for it.
Awesome. Awesome. Great, great, great words of advice. You even help people get past writer's block. I personally like to write near the water too. It's just
Oh
something about the water that just opens you up,
God.
and it just flows like water.
I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's phenomenal. I used to live by the beach. I'm actually not too far from the beach now, but I just love sitting on the water. Even if I'm not gonna write, it's just
Hmm.
something about being on the water. So
Yes.
yeah, so thank you for sharing those words of encouragement.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Tell everybody where they can find you at online, on
Mhm.
social media. Share your information and where they can buy your books.
Okay, so you can find me on social media, Dr. Richelle. I am on Instagram. I do have a website. It's Dr. Richelle Resto at Yahoo. No, at Dr. Richelle Resto .org. And so you will see my information there for the Spiritual Daughter Movement, which is a wonderful movement for women. We now 5 years in, and it's just an inspirational call for women to come together, and we talk about different topics. We do a lot of things in the community. I call it the community ministry without walls. So we're always doing something positive. We just did a drive to make chemo caps for victims who are going through chemotherapy, to keep them warm, and making knit sets for someone who had double lung transplant. So we're shipping things to hospitals and things in the community for homeless families. And so we do a lot of things just to make a difference in the lives of people. We send out handwritten postcards of words of encouragement. And so we have a team that writes out words of encouragement, because everybody's not on social media.
Yeah.
So you can find me there. I do have books. They should be in Amazon. I every book that I write, I make a kit to go with it.
Okay.
And so I gotta mail you one.
Awesome.
And so the Lord always uses me in unique ways. So every book that I write, I make kits to go with them. And so this kit was called the other kit that I did was a Destiny kit, and this kit that I called was a Venture kit. And so in that kit, it has just different little things to remind you. It has journals in it behind closed doors. So just different little things or nuggets that you could, while you're reading the book, you can eat some candy, you know, or chapstick is in there, and they're just customized things. So I got to mail you one, and I so the Lord always has me do something everything to go along with every book that I write for the readers, so that they will never forget that their tears have purpose, and they can always write about the things that happens behind closed doors.
Wow, that's phenomenal, phenomenal. Thank you for sharing with us tonight. Before we
Thank you.
sign off, what are the final words you have for our viewers tonight?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Before we sign off, what are your final words to our viewers?
Thank you all so much for just joining us. This is a hot and heavy topic. I really appreciate you so much for having me on the show, and doing the wonderful job on my broadcast video. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and creating platforms for authors and businesses, just to get out there and share this information. And thank you so much to all of our followers and viewers. Please continue to support what's going on Working Wednesdays. And so again, thank you, and I appreciate you so much. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you for joining, and I will make sure you get my mailing address.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
Okay, good night.
All right, everybody. So thank you for joining me tonight for the Working Wednesdays broadcast. It has been a phenomenal show. I know some of us heard some information that we were not used to hearing, but it is going on in the church. What she talked about with all the back and forth with the men of God. It's real. It's raw. It's real. And it just is what it is. So go ahead, head on over to Amazon and get a copy of her book, Married to the Church, Richelle Resto. Resto is her last name. Get a copy of the book. I'm personally going to get it on Kindle because y'all know I'm a Kindle hog. So I love books on Kindle. But go ahead and get the book. My book is not out in circulation, but she and I are going to connect and do some things with that, because I just believe that God has more is going to develop from that. So God bless you all. Thank you for joining me this week. It's been my pleasure. I am your host again, Audrey V. Hurd. If you need to reach out to me through IBG Publications, you can do that at our website, ibgpublications.com. It's the same across all social platforms, IBG Publications on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So we do download these videos. They make it over to our YouTube channel. So go ahead over there and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button so you can get the notification for the video as we upload it every week. So God bless y'all. Have a wonderful night, and thanks for joining. Join me next week. My guest next week is none other than author and business owner of Make It Rise, Tamora Johnson. So I'm so excited to have her on next week. She's one of my partners in business. I don't want to call her a partner in crime, but she's a partner in business. So I'm excited she's going to be on with us next week. And for those that ordered the vow, your books will be shipping out this week. I've been getting notifications that they'll be shipping. And I still didn't forget about the promises for the gifts. I haven't forgotten. I'm going to take care of that soon. So God bless y'all and have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining.